Welcome to the Fierce as Fuck podcast. I'm your host, Amanda King, and I'm here to teach anybody who wants to fucking listen how to have the audacity to say fuck it to societal standards and live their most authentic life. This podcast is dedicated to bringing sexual conversations from behind closed doors onto the main fucking stage. Because sex, masturbation, squirting, guess what? It's all fucking normal. And by bringing these conversations to the forefront, we help people feel less alone in this world. We help them feel safe. We help them gain their power back, step into their confidence, and have the ability to express themselves authentically as fuck in this world. Because it takes fucking audacity to be your truest self. And we have boatloads of audacity up in this bitch. So let me ask you this. Are you ready for some epic shit? Hello, everybody. Long time no hear, see. I'm not really sure what we would say on a podcast, but it's been a fucking while. And in full transparency, I went through a massive life transition of moving from Virginia to New York that just felt very overwhelming. And so some stuff fell through the cracks, but I'm here and I want to get back into recording podcast episodes more frequently because I think the last one I posted was in May and now we are here in July. And that's just not fair to you guys. And the podcast is also a really beautiful space to reach people that maybe might not be on Facebook or social media in general. And so let's just, I don't know, please allow me to first own my fucking shit where I have been really shitty about posting. And let's just dive into a topic that I feel very passionate about and that I feel needs to be discussed more because I think it's one of the sexiest things in the entire planet. And it has so much to do with sex and people don't realize it. And that's vulnerability. Vulnerability is one of the questions I get asked the most of how do I open up to my partner in new ways? How do I communicate to them my wants, my needs, my desires? How do I talk to a partner about a new kink? How do I open myself up to other people in a way that puts me out there so I can meet new people? And the answer to all of these questions is vulnerability. But we need to recognize something about vulnerability as well, is that vulnerability is not easy. And a lot of people think it is. A lot of people will say, well, just be more vulnerable. And then you laugh at them because you're like, well, thanks. No shit, Sherlock. Like, how the fuck do you be more vulnerable? What does that even fucking mean? And when I look at vulnerability, I feel, or I don't know what the Oxford fucking definition is, and I don't really give a fuck, to be quite honest. I feel vulnerability is being able to communicate something deep inside of your soul to another person and not making their reaction mean anything about you. I believe vulnerability is being able to, in a way, open your heart up to other people and say, this is me, this is how I feel, this is what I want, this is what I desire. And it's okay that if you're not on the same page as me, and it's okay if you don't accept it, and it's okay if you don't like it because it has nothing fucking to do with you. Vulnerability is just allowing yourself to live an open heart style life. And although it makes everyone else uncomfortable, not give a fuck about that. Vulnerability is strength. It is power. And yet society has deemed it weak and feminine, which is even fucking more of a shit show. Before I get on to about 16 tangents here, let's discuss why vulnerability is in fact so fucking hard for all of us. When you look at how we are brought up in society, society definitely puts us into these roles of how women should behave and how men should behave. Now, if you're non-binary, this applies to you in whatever role that society has put you in, because we are all addressed a role the second that we come out of this out of the womb. And whether or not we agree with it or identify with it, society definitely tries to push us the fuck into it. And so when we enter this world, society says, if you're a man, you need to act this way. If you're a woman, you need to act this way. And everything and else in between is fucking weird and funky, and we don't understand it. And so we're going to put shame on it, and we're going to put guilt on it. Women are brought up in this society to believe that expressing their feelings, because women feel, we feel at such a fucking visceral cellular level. We feel in our bones. We feel. And we are told that those feelings mean that we are too emotional, that we're too sensitive, that we need a thicker skin. And men, y'all get it on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where the second a man tries to express himself emotionally, or God fucking forbid he put his feelings out into this world, it is, wow, that's really, you're a pussy, you're a fag, or whatever goddamn derogatory term that they will give a man who is just trying to say, that doesn't make me feel good. I'm unhappy. I'm sad. God forbid men be allowed to feel any other fucking emotion besides deep-rooted anger. That's acceptable by society. And women, we get the contradictory of like, oh, well, you're too emotional. And then when women innately start shutting down that emotion because they're sick and tired of being told that they need a thicker skin and they shouldn't be as sensitive and over emotional, they then get cold and bitchy, right? And so society doesn't teach us vulnerability at all. Society teaches us emotions, feelings are something that are supposed to be kept to you and only you. And so we go through this world, whether we're over emotional or not, or whether we go through this world feeling so many fucking feelings, deep rooted, beautiful feelings. And then as children, we try to express those feelings to the world. And the world says, shut the fuck up. And I laugh. It's not funny. I deflect with humor. It's not fucking funny. The world tells you to shut the fuck up. And the world tells you no one gives a shit about your feelings. And the world tells you you need to deal with your feelings on your own, or you need to push them so deep down inside of you that no one can tell the amount of pain or hurt or grief you're going through, because you have a plaster of fucking smile on your face like you're Betty fucking Beaver and you're in the happiest life you've ever dreamed. And so we grow up innately fearing our own feelings, because our feelings are shamed, guilted, and made to feel like they are something that is not to be trusted. Ooh, sometimes when stuff comes out of my mouth, our feelings aren't to be trusted. And so we get older, we go into our teenage years, we go into puberty, and we don't trust anything that we feel. As we move out of childhood, we innately lose connection with our own sense of self, our own sense of intuition, our own sense of feeling. We tend to take society's ideas and society's notions on feelings and make them our own. And then we just get further and further away from ourselves while doing so. And then we come into a world which we are progressively moving more into a, hey, you feel feelings, that's great. Let's try to like express them. But we still have so much further to go. And so we come into this world, right? And we try to express our feelings, and we're constantly shut the fuck down by society, by our parents, by our family members, by partners, by friends. And then all of a sudden, we just stop expressing ourselves. We look at vulnerability as something that is weak, because you're weak if you say to someone, my God, that really just hurt my feelings. That made me feel really bad. I don't like how you do this. Or telling a person, I love you. I just want to spend the rest of my life with you. Or you make me happy. Or I miss you. All of these things take vulnerability, and we don't know vulnerability. How are we supposed to know vulnerability unless you lucked out in this world where you had parents who were super in touch with their feelings, who constantly combated society's bullshit? All of us are walking around, myself included, trying to search for this idea of vulnerability and how to become more vulnerable as a human being on this planet. And it is the hardest fucking life search that you could ever do, because there is no how-to book on vulnerability. There is no I don't know. There are no guidelines because no one out there, or maybe most, there are some people out there, I shouldn't say that, are living vulnerable lives. And they're trying to express how important vulnerability is. And the rest of society is like, you're a freak. What are you doing? Oh my God, you're such a wimp. Why are you talking about this? All this bullshit. And so their positivity and their knowledge gets just completely over, what is it? Over, not over consumed, overdone or over, I don't know, it just gets shit on. And their words don't really make it to the masses, when in fact that's exactly what the masses need to hear is vulnerability is safe. Vulnerability is not this weak ass bitch that society makes it out to be. And that's the scariest thing about it, right? Society paints it as weak, but it is the most powerful thing in the entire world. And once you can really understand your vulnerability, you unleash some fucking magic. As cliche and corny as that sounds, into this world, the second you recognize, hey, vulnerability is my strength, the rest of the world can't fuck with you. The second you realize vulnerability is my peace, it's my balance, it's my, I don't know, it's my way of life, then the rest of the world just, they can't touch you, even though they're going to try. And if you follow anybody or listen to anybody who says vulnerability is easy, stop fucking listening to them, because they are just peddling you some self-help guru bullshit. Because it's not fucking easy. It's the hardest thing in the entire world. If vulnerability was easy, wouldn't we all be able to walk around communicating our thoughts, feelings, emotions, our beliefs, our desires, our wants on a soul level easily, effortlessly, and with confidence? Of course we would. But the matter of the fact is, fact of the matter of the fact, whatever, it's not easy. It is something that you have to learn in a way. Just like you have to learn to read, you have to learn to write, you have to learn to speak, you have to learn and teach and train yourself to be vulnerable. Because when you try to be vulnerable, innately, I use that word innately a lot, I'm realizing, but innately, your years or decades of just being slammed by society and the people around you when you express your vulnerability are going to stop you from expressing your vulnerability. Because the second you start opening yourself up in this world, it is like all of that self-defense mechanism locks within you and all your walls go right up, because you ultimately think the second I'm vulnerable, the second I put myself out there and I try to express myself in this world, or just tell people I'm happy or that doesn't feel good, all of a sudden I'm going to get backlash. I'm going to get feedback. I'm going to get all of this shit. It's going to hit me and it's going to mean something about me. And I'm going to be I'm going to be in the wrong for expressing my vulnerability when it's not. It's you're in the right and everyone else is in the wrong. Vulnerability is something that needs to be worked on every single day of your life. It is something that is a conscious effort until it's not. Vulnerability is not allowing that thing, that tick, and you all have experienced this at one point in your life where someone says something and it hurts. And I mean, you feel that shit in your heart. Like it is like a little dagger. It's like your heart skips a beat. It's like your stomach turns. You feel a body reaction to it. And in that moment, you think, oh my God, that really hurt my feelings. That didn't feel good at all. And then all of a sudden your brain says, don't fucking say anything. Let it go. It's not a big deal. They didn't really mean it that way. Or, wow, that was kind of mean, but I shouldn't say anything because saying something is going to cause extra shit. When that happens, vulnerability is recognizing that that happened, that your feelings are valid, and that being able to sit here and say to someone, that didn't make me feel good. And if that other person sits there and says something like, well, what do you mean? Oh, I just think you're being over dramatic. Why are you allowing that to get to you? My man, you're getting really sensitive. It's in that moment being like, I'm not. I'm just trying to be honest. And I'm trying to communicate how I feel. Vulnerability is taking what's going on in your head and giving it a fucking voice rather than obsessing over it over and over and over again and replaying the scenario 15 times in your fucking head, wondering and analyzing what you should have said versus what you did say. Vulnerability is beautiful. That's beautiful. And I say this as someone who I have struggled with vulnerability my entire life. I grew up with extremely emotionally manipulative family members still to this day, and gaslighting fucking central, making everything about them, making any time that you express your feelings mean that you're a bad person, like you name it. I've experienced it growing up, and it allowing yourself to be vulnerable when you have such past trauma like that, and just when you're surrounded by people who, no matter how much you evolve, refuse to evolve with you and would rather attack your evolvement rather than recognize their own like bullshit and ignorance, is exhausting and it's hard. But vulnerability is what will make you the happiest in this world. It is what will create the best connections in this world. It is what will make you the strongest, most successful person in this world. Vulnerability is, it's superpowers, right? It's a superpower. It's being able to know that no matter what happens in this world, when you open yourself up vulnerably, you've gotten it out of you. You've gotten it out of your head. You've gotten it out of your chest, out of your soul. When you open yourself up vulnerably in this world, magic will happen, even if the other person takes it pretty shittily. Being vulnerable is the way you build true connection and intimacy with those around you. Because if you're not vulnerable with them, then how do you expect to build lasting relationships with people, true relationships, not these shallow ones that are like the frenemies or the acquaintances, but lifelong, deep connection style relationships? You're not going to be able to do that if you can't be vulnerable with someone, if you can't let your guard down with someone, if you can't allow someone to truly see you. Because ultimately, that's what we all want in this world, right? Is to be seen and to be valued and to be heard by other people. But how do you expect that to happen if you can't let those walls down and let them see you at your core? Let them see you for the person that you are, aspire to be. I don't know. And maybe I'm just literally talking out of my ass on this episode, and y'all are like, what the fuck is this bitch talking about? But I think that we try to how to so much shit in life. And what does it end up doing? It ends up putting so much more on our plates every day. We think that we have to be better. We think we have to be more vulnerable. We think we have to do all of these things in order to strive to this level of ourselves that all like the epitome of authenticity. And don't get me wrong, I love that shit too. And it is what I strive to do and be better every day. But with vulnerability, I don't think you can how to vulnerability. Vulnerability is just trust. Ooh, yes, trust. It's trusting yourself. It's trusting yourself to know that no matter how vulnerable you are, in a world that will shun vulnerability, it doesn't matter, because saying it and putting yourself out there is worth so much more than just keeping it inside and not letting the world see it. And vulnerability is basically, in a way, standing naked in front of another person. Like, you always think of those movies. It's like intimacy, right? Think of the movies. It was the first time two people have sex and they've had this like super long relationship, and like they come together and they're both slowly undressing each other to see each other naked. It's an intimate moment. Vulnerability is intimacy. Not everyone can handle both. Not everyone can handle either. And so, how to become more vulnerable is more of just validating your emotions and saying, I feel this way. And although you may not agree with me, although you may not recognize or acknowledge that, it doesn't really matter, because I don't need your validation in my feelings, because I feel them. They are valid within me. I validate my feelings. Vulnerability is expressing those feelings to people and knowing that it was when you express your vulnerability and it backfires or it hurts and it causes you to be in pain, it was never the wrong feelings. It was just the wrong person to express that vulnerability to. Your feelings are never wrong. And it took me fucking 37 years of my life to figure that shit out as well. Is vulnerability is recognizing that my feelings, my feelings are valid. My feelings are my feelings. And I don't need other people to validate them or acknowledge them, because I validate them and I acknowledge them. And you know what happens when you say that? When you're in a vulnerable state and you say to someone, like, I don't need you to acknowledge my feelings. I don't need you to validate them. I do. That's the scariest fucking thing you could ever say to someone on the other end who thinks you need their validation. Nothing is scarier than hearing that I don't need your shit. That I'm confident in myself and I trust that I'm feeling these feelings and they are fucking real. And that's what matters. And that's what's really honestly beautiful about vulnerability. So to be more vulnerable is to open yourself up in a lot of ways. And I know that this necessarily isn't speaking or an episode on sex, but I've done episodes on vulnerability and oral sex in women and vulnerability in sex in general. But I don't think I've ever just dedicated an episode to just plain fucking vulnerability, the most powerful thing on this entire planet. And the thing that so many people in this world are so chicken shit and cowardly, because they would rather look at it and think, ew, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to work with that. I don't want to touch that. I don't want to be that. Then take the hard way, because it is harder to be vulnerable too, guys. Vulnerability is not something that's easy. Vulnerability is actually hard. It is hard to be vulnerable. It is hard because it's so much easier just to let someone roll over you. It's so much easier to not speak up. It's so much easier to push those feelings deep, deep down inside. Is it better? Absolutely not. Will it ultimately hurt you in some way, shape, or form? Absolutely. But vulnerability is, it's magic. And having bravery, it's brave to be vulnerable, y'all. It's fucking brave as shit. And other people don't have that bravery. Other people would rather take the easy way out. Other people would rather point and say that's icky rather than recognize that it is truly life changing when you are vulnerable and you allow people to see you at all levels, to truly see your authentic self as a human fucking being. It is transcending. It's magic. And so hopefully this episode helped some of you, I know it's kind of a roundabout way of how to how to be vulnerable, but I think it's just an overall discussion of vulnerability is power. And if more people could be vulnerable in this world, then we could have deeper discussions, or that we could have less miscommunication with partners. Because even when you're in it with a partner and you're upset and they're upset, it's so hard to be vulnerable in that moment too, and saying, this doesn't feel good. I hate fighting. I hate this shit. It hurts my soul. That's so powerful. And it's so scary, because when you open yourself up like that, you have the likelihood of being rejected hard, right? And everyone innately on this planet has a fear of being rejected, because ultimately we all want to be liked. And although there are people out there that are like, fuck you, I don't give a fuck if anybody likes me, like, but do you really? Because I am one of those people, and I definitely want to be liked by people. It's not, doesn't make me feel good when people don't like me. I still move on. But we all have this fear of being rejected, especially by the people that we're closest to. And so when you sit there and you open yourself up so vulnerably to this world, there is a huge fear of rejection, and there is a huge chance that you will be rejected. But that shouldn't stop you from doing it. It shouldn't stop you from speaking your truth. It shouldn't stop you at all. Because the second, I don't know, the second you're vulnerable with the right person, it changes your whole view on vulnerability. And sometimes it takes expressing your vulnerability to a whole lot of wrong fucking people in this world. A whole lot of people, wrong people, for you to find the right people to express yourself vulnerably to. And it's hard when you have partners, whether you've been dating for a week or you've been married for 15 years, vulnerability is still part of the game. It is not anything that goes away the second a ring gets on that fucking finger. Whole another episode for a whole other day. But vulnerability, it's everything. And I always think of this. I would rather lead a vulnerable life where everyone thinks I'm a fucking sensitive freaking pussy or some girl who's over emotional than not to put myself out there in this world and live a sad life watching all of these other people live amazing lives because they can. It's an active choice you have to make every single day, being vulnerable. And it's small steps too. It's sitting here and saying, that didn't make me feel good, or I don't like when you say that about me, or that hurt my feelings. Vulnerability is saying, I want to try something new with you, and I'm scared that you're going to think that I'm weird, or that you're going to think that I'm, deranged or a freak or whatever, because I'm into this, but I'm coming to you, my partner, to express this to you because I want to share this with you. Vulnerability is when someone makes your coffee wrong, being able to say, hey, I'm sorry, this isn't right. It doesn't taste good. Can you please remake it? Like, that's how minuscule, one of those, vulnerability can be. It doesn't have to be some big fucking thing every single day where you walk out and you say, I'm going to go tell Schmo, who has been pissing me off for 15 years, right where to shove it, and all of that pain and hurt. That's not what vulnerability is. I mean, it is, but it's also taking small steps every day to try to be a little bit more vulnerable. And there will be days where you will fucking crush it. You will crush it. You will be like, oh my God, I was the most vulnerable bitch in the entire world today. And it was amazing. And it feels so good. And then there will be days where you will suck, where you will fall back into all your avoidant or anxious attachment syndrome shit. There will be days where you will feel so overwhelmed that you can't express yourself at all. There will be days where you suck at being vulnerable and you're not vulnerable at all. And you want to kick yourself in your ass because you missed an opportunity to be vulnerable because you were too scared to be vulnerable. And that's okay too. Life isn't about perfection. It's about effort. I said that to my friend the other day. I don't expect perfection. I just expect effort. And I think that's so true. We shouldn't expect perfection with vulnerability because no one's ever perfect. You want effort. You want someone to just be able to put themselves out there to the world just a little bit more, or to try a little bit more. Vulnerability is just making an active effort and then giving yourself grace when you inevitably fall on your face one day when you just can't be vulnerable, and not beating yourself up and saying, God damn it, I missed that opportunity. That was so stupid of me. Learn from the lesson, right? Look at that missed opportunity and say, shit, that was an opportunity for me to be vulnerable and I missed it. But that's okay. I'll get the next one. You'll get the next one, because the universe will always send you extra ones. You'll always have opportunities. Just don't beat yourself up over them, because once again, vulnerability is the hardest thing in the world, in the planet, whatever. It's hard as fuck. Trying to get too philosophical there. Let's just use common words, Amanda. It's hard as fuck. And so be nice to yourself. Give yourself patience and grace, and then applaud the living shit out of yourself every time you're vulnerable. I have my best friend, Stephanie. Every time I'm vulnerable about things that normally I would back down from, I message her and I said, I'm just proud of myself. I'm proud that I spoke my truth. I'm proud that I stood my ground. I'm proud that I said what I needed to say. And I'm proud of myself. Every time that you're vulnerable, say that to yourself. I'm proud of myself, because there are other people in this world who couldn't do what you just did. I love you guys so much, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Fierce as Fuck podcast. And some parting words for you today. Remember this: no matter how hard society pushes you down, no matter how many times you fall, as long as you get the fuck back up, they can never stop you. You are unfuckable with. You will win. Don't allow this world to dictate how you show up in it. Don't allow society to make you bend the knee. Instead, make them bend theirs. And don't forget, if you like what you heard, go on to iTunes and Spotify and leave your girl a review. Until next time, my